ministry.
Oftentimes, ministry can be a very stressful vocation, and that stress spills into the personal lives of pastors and Christian leaders.
That's so true, Ken. Well, our guests today are Ron and Rodetta Cook of Care for Pastors, and they're going to offer trustworthy and confidential counsel to all of these pastors who are going through problems.
You know, the statistics are staggering regarding how many people in church leadership are experiencing crisis in their own lives. Watch this.
People find it difficult to believe that every day 53 pastors will be terminated or decide to leave the ministry. 53. That's 400 every week. That's 1,600 every month. That's 19,200 this year alone. People also don't realize that to replace those pastors who are leaving the ministry with comparably trained individuals can take 4 to 8 years. 4 to 8 years. And we may be replacing years of experience with youth, but with no experience. Complicating the loss of skilled pastors from the pulpit is the fact that nearly 4,000 American churches close annually. Of course, the reasons are varied and numerous, but whatever the reasons, this year the traditional forum for rebutting the impact of adverse societal decisions, the church pulpit, will be missing. And that church will have less opportunity to serve as a conscience of those 4,000 communities. Seeing and hearing these facts for the first time often causes people to grasp why our nation is in the deplorable moral condition we find to be common today. Once they hear these facts, people quickly see the implications for the American church. They understand that the church cannot sustain such hemorrhaging among its spiritual leaders without suffering irreparable damage. Care for Pastors exists to stem this loss by offering care to pastors and their families, which allows their wounds to heal and restores them to their ministry.
That's a powerful video.
It sure is.
Well, our guests today, Ron and Rodetta Cook, offer a safe place for church leaders to bare their hearts and to help them, to give them some remedy for their pain.
That's right. Thank you for joining us today. We want to welcome Ron and Rodetta Cook from Leesburg.
Yes, sir.
It's good to have you with us today.
Nice to have you both
Thank you.
here.
Pleasure.
And tell us a little bit about your lives first. When did you first come to know Christ?
Well, we both received Christ when we were 12 years old.
Really? That's great. Been Christians for a long time.
Christians for a long time. Been married 33 years, and been in the ministry the whole time.
So you are a pastor.
And you're a pastor.
I am a pastor right now. We're in a transition process, moving from the lead position into Care for Pastors full time.
Well, tell us what Care for Pastors is, the organization.
Care for Pastors is a ministry of encouragement, counseling, restoration for pastors and their families. We don't want to just focus on the pastor because those helpmates, it affects the whole family.
Right.
Why is there such a need for this kind of ministry today? Every day we pick up the paper and it seems like there's something in there about ministers falling or leaders falling, Christian leaders falling.
Ken, the pressure on pastors and their families is just phenomenal. I mean, you saw the statistics. 52 today will either be terminated or will make a decision to walk away from ministry. And just the pressures of society, it's a pressure cooker out there. Pastors many times have unrealistic expectations put on them by the church and as well as themselves. We're not supposed to have any problems.
Well, and we also expect that our pastors should be qualified in every area. Every pastor is not necessarily gifted as a counselor. Every pastor is not necessarily a great teacher. We need to be able to identify the gifts that a pastor has, and then for us as parishioners not to put that kind of undue pressure on you guys. Truthfully, I don't know how you do it, Ron. You were in the ministry for how many years?
30 plus.
30 plus. And did you help start Care for Pastors because of some of these issues being bombarded on you?
22 years ago, we were close to being one of those statistics. After 9 years of pastoring 2 small country churches, one of our first business meetings, a deacon stood up and says, "Preacher, the problem with you is you don't have enough stripes on your back, and it's up to us to put some on you."
How
I was
harmful.
25.
Yeah.
Now these are to be your friends. These are the people to be supporting you.
Right.
Supposedly the mature spiritual leaders of the church. So
Right.
it's got to be tough. And Ron, what does it do to Rodetta? You know, what does it do to you and your children? And how do you, Rodetta, as a wife and a helpmate, support Ron?
It's very difficult. You feel like you're always living in a glass house. You know, you feel like you need to be everything to everybody, and we have to learn as the wife that it's only God that we need to be pleasing. It's not everyone else, because part of the church wants you to be more involved, part wants you to be less involved. You just have to learn to a balancing act in you know, protecting your children, protecting your home, and being the support to your husband. I had a friend one time who, a pastor's wife, spoke at her husband's funeral and said, you know, I'm here to tell you my husband had another woman in his life. And he always tried to please that woman. No matter what he did, he never could do enough. And that other woman was the church.
Yes.
And when she called, he jumped. And she said, you know, I love that other woman, but sometimes she didn't love me back.
So how do you have a balance, Ron, with that? When you're expected to be on call 24 hours a day, somebody dies at 3 a.m., you know, somebody wants to get married next week, how do you create a balance?
We have to learn to say no.
Yeah.
And that's very difficult. And you have to teach your people, you know, we can't do everything. Training leaders, lay leaders, so many times we don't tap into those resources. We get sucked into thinking that we have to do everything, in which we can't. And it's unfair to our families, it's unfair to us, it's unfair to the church.
And many times, particularly in smaller churches where this pastor is the only pastor, that becomes an almost unbearable responsibility sometimes, because there's so many people pulling from so many different areas. Do this, I want you to do this. And then you've got, again, the leadership putting demands too.
80% of our churches in America today are 150 or less. So that,
Right.
you know, it's that one guy,
Yes.
that one guy who's responsible for everything.
So what do you do in addition to encouraging the pastors with Care for Pastors? Does somebody, if a pastor is, let's say, having a hard time and he's going through some struggles, maybe depression, maybe he's considering leaving the ministry, does he come to Care? Does he call you on the phone? What do you do? How do you minister to these pastors?
Right now on two levels. One, the best way to describe it would be preventative care, like taking vitamins. Encouragement, mentoring with the pastor, his wife, his family. Level two would be an ER, an emergency room, a walk-in clinic. It may be a phone call. It may be, if they're close enough, that they drive and we sit down and we offer counsel and encouragement. Level three of care is what we're developing right now, and that's an intensive care.
That's when the crisis has happened.
That's when the crisis has happened, when we would bring them here 3 to 6 months for intensive restoration and
Is that what
healing.
Serenity
Serenity
House
House?
is?
It is. It's short term right now because that's the only house that we have. We were able to purchase a bank-owned home, decorated it like a model home, where families walk in and there is that immediate. Recently, we had a family visit with us from Kentucky. They had a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old, and they'd never been on vacation. It was bivocational. And we took them to the Serenity House and gave them the keys and walked away. And the mom noticed her 10-year-old son came through the house and he was crying. And she says, "Son, what's wrong?" He says, "Mom, why are these people doing this for us?
It's so nice.
We have never seen." And just the joy, the joy of that, and that's implanting memories
Yeah.
Yes.
in that pastor's children, a good memory. Okay.
So you bring the family in as a unit. And how long would they generally stay? Or is it varied?
Right now, that level 2 is just it's a week to 2 weeks, and again, the long-term goal is to help, have enough resources and homes to have the intensive care where we can offer. There's just very few organizations in the United States today that are offering this kind of care for pastors.
Well, you're definitely doing your part with this ministry. We're not going to all be a part of this ministry, but we all go to church, or most people, most of our viewers today that are listening will be church members somewhere. What can we do as individuals, Ron, to help our particular pastors?
Obviously, pray for him, encourage them. Very, very few pastors, and especially their wives, suffer from an overdose of encouragement. And it doesn't take a lot.
Because we expect you to be encouraging us.
Exactly.
How often do we reverse that and minister to the minister? That's difficult.
And for the last 10 years, we've been a part of a church that has loved us, has encouraged us. Pastor Appreciation Month is coming up.
Yes.
And it's always been a big deal in our church. And I would encourage your listeners to appreciate their pastors and their wives.
That's right.
So many times they're neglected.
Yeah.
They're just
Take them out as a
neglected.
couple.
Absolutely.
And encourage them. And
Or
assist
better
them.
yet, send them out.
Send them out, that's right. Let us
Send
take
them
care of
out
the
on a
kids
date.
tonight.
That's exactly.
That's right. Let them have a
Great
date.
idea.
Particularly young pastors.
Exactly.
They really need that help. Now, you've got some great folks involved with your organization, too. Pastor Jim Henry. Of course, anybody here in Central Florida that's been here any length of time. How much we appreciate Jim Henry and Jeanette Henry and for their ministry here.
Absolutely.
Matt Staver and so many other folks that are involved with your ministry.
On our advisory board, yes. Ron Blue, Pat Morley, Bob Beal, Dick Wynn,
Yes.
who's our executive director now.
He's a great friend of mine.
Is he?
Yes, we love Dick.
Oh,
He's a
Dick
great
is
guy.
he has been a tremendous resource, just
Yeah.
coming alongside of us
Good,
and offering
good.
40 plus years of experience. Yeah.
And you encourage people to come by and visit your center in
Absolutely.
Leesburg also.
We would love them.
And where's that, by the way?
We're right on 27, going into Leesburg. The address is
26736 US Highway 27 South, right in front of the Legacy subdivision.
Do you love how your wife is able to just go like that? Just almost finish your thought for you.
That's why I look to her.
I tell you what, you guys are a wonderful couple and a wonderful to have passion for ministers, for pastors, to care about them, Ron and Rodetta, like you are. What really was kind of the impetus that got you to say, something's got to give? We've got to help these pastors out there.
Again, probably 18 years ago, we were involved in singles ministry, and God used the singles ministry. We were in Lynchburg, Virginia, and God used singles ministry to bring healing to us so that we weren't a statistic. And we were at a retreat at Myrtle Beach, and I was alone, and God spoke to me about
Really?
Care for Pastors, that one day this would be our ministry. And,
Really?
and all the stuff that we've gone through in 30 years has all been prep work
Wow.
for this
18
ministry.
years ago. You know, that's encouraging too to our viewers today that oftentimes God speaks to us decades ago, and it might not be till decades later that you see the fruition of what He's been working toward. That's great.
We like everything instant.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so we moved from what could be to what should be, and now
Yes.
we're in the stage of what absolutely must be.
Yeah, and is.
Ron, you got a conference coming up in October 20th to the 23rd, and it's going to be held at the Plantation Inn and Golf Resort in Crystal River, Florida. And tell us about this conference.
Well, once again, it's a time for the pastor and his wife to come and be encouraged.
Good.
We've got great speakers like Bob Beal and Dick
Yes.
Wynn, but just some downtime. Crystal, the Plantation Inn is a beautiful resort, old Florida, updated, where we just want to come and love on them.
Yeah.
Just some time away to love on them.
Because emotionally, I'm sure there are times when your emotional bank is empty. And for you to call this conference, you are worthy. We all need to be reminded of that on a daily basis.
That's
you know,
right.
we get drained and drained and pulled out, but God makes us worthy. So I love the ministry, Care for Pastors. There's a website, viewers, that we'd like to refer you to, which is www.careforpastors.org. You can email Ron or probably Rodetta at either one of these email addresses, ron@careforpastors.org, or Rodetta. You might be a pastor's wife out there or know someone who just needs to talk to another woman. Rodetta@careforpastors.org. The phone number in Leesburg is 352-728-8179, and I know they would be more than happy to speak to you about some of these important, critical issues. Thank you.
That's right. Thank you so
So
much.
much.
And don't forget that message today that we've shared to do. Be kind to your pastors.
Yes.
leaders, deacons, elders, be kind and work together.
That's good.
Realizing pastors don't have all the gifts that they need to do this job. That's why you're there to help and to be that supporting hand to your pastors.